humans. It's been just over half a generation since these secretive but affable beings first came to our attention and our world. We liked them almost immediately, even with their strange quirks. No physical contact, not ever sharing a meal, and we knew nothing about their world. The humans deflected every question about it. Yet, despite this, we grew to be very fond of them. At half our size, they were seen as childlike. They had a quick wit and were fast to join in with any jokes made about them, and they could give as well as they took. Despite their secretive nature about many basic things, when asked, they just laughed and said it was a cultural thing. The humans quickly integrated into our society. Their numbers were small. Only around 2,000 were ever on world or on board. They were highly sought after as ship's crew, mechanical engineers and repair technicians. Their ability to understand, adapt and solve problems made them invaluable. More than one human invention or modification was in common use throughout our society. And then, the Zilfang came. A warrior species. We'd heard only rumors. Distress calls from other galactic species, followed by silence. The Zilfang fleet appeared at our border. They quickly wiped out our patrols. As a peaceful species of bankers, traders and merchants, we never had much of a military. Few of our trading partners would dare attack us, as we, Calabrian, had economic and trading ties that went back hundreds of generations. We could wipe out the economies of most anyone who dared. That's why I trembled as the Zilfang clan leader approached in the leadership hall. As leader of my people, it stood to me to face the enemy commander, ceremonial blade held trembling in my hand. "Surrender, and you may live," the warrior spoke, the translator making the guttural noises it uttered understandable. But I didn't need a translator to understand that I was about to die. The Zilfang was slightly less in height but heavily built, with armor covering much of his body. It was clearly built for combat. Despite my fear, I was the leader of my people. As such, it was my duty to defend them as best I could. I cannot do that. I swung my blade with everything I had. The Zilfang raised his arm. His armored fist met my blade, shattering it. The remnants skittered across the floor. I staggered back. My arm shattered and collapsed onto my knees. The Zilfang laughed, pitiful, and started to walk towards me, his fist drawing back. That was when Brian stepped in front of me. Brian, the human ambassador, my human friend. "No, please, this doesn't involve you," I groaned. Brian turned to look at me, a look of sadness I'd rarely ever seen on his face. "I'm sorry, old friend. I'm truly sorry for this." Then he smiled, and as he turned his head to face the Zilfang, his face transformed. It was a face of anger. It was terrifying. The human held up his hand, his fingers all held up together, palm facing the enemy, and uttered one word. "Stop!" "What's this? A pet?" The Zilfang laughed. The enemy commander drew back his fist and swung. "No!" I cried, about to watch my friend die. Then watched as Brian caught the enemy commander's fist in mid-swing, like he was catching a lemble fruit. The Zilfang commander grunted and tried to pull away. Brian held it as if it was nothing. Then he began to squeeze. The enemy commander groaned and fell to his knees. "Are you deaf, or just stupid? What about the word stop did you not comprehend?" The enemy swung with his other hand, and Brian caught it with his other hand. Apparently it's the latter, so here is what's going to happen. You are going to leave. You are going to leave this world, and you are going to leave my friends alone. Then he smiled. "And what if I refuse? What if I kill you all?" the commander groaned. "Yup, definitely stupid. Tell you what, I'm going to let you go. Give you time to think about it. To help persuade you to make the right choice, I'm going to keep a little souvenir to remind you about what I said." Suddenly, Brian yanked his arm back, tearing the commander's arm clean off. The Zilithan screamed. Brian swung the commander's arm around in an arc, smashing it into him with terrifying force, sending him flying back to crash into the Zilithan commander's underlings. He then pointed at them with the gruesome appendage. "Take him back to your ship. Give him whatever medical care he needs. Pass on the message I tried to give to your idiot friend there." With that, the cadre dragged their now unconscious leader to their shuttle. The sound of engines could be heard fading into the sky. Brian sighed, dropped his gruesome club, turned back to me with that same sad smile. "Here, my friend. Let me help you up." For the first time in our many years of friendship, I was touched by a human. I flinched. "Don't worry. I promise I'll leave you in one piece." He lifted me to my feet without any effort at all. "How?" I groaned. "There will be plenty of time for questions later, and I promise to answer them all. But first we have to get that arm fixed up, and I have to make some calls. I suspect our friends aren't done." Brian explained everything later that evening. "The reason we've never let anybody know about our world is that we come from a high-gravity level 10 death world. Your body would collapse and you'd die in minutes if you went." "Level 10? I thought that was only theoretical." "Well, it's not. Your level 10 is the closest thing you have to describe our world. It's probably closer to 12. "Okay, I understand high gravity. The Zithian come from a high-gravity level 3 death world. I understand level 10, 12 is unbelievable. But that doesn't explain how you did that. I've never seen such strength." "Yeah, well, our gravity is quite a bit higher. Plus, we humans are pretty big into, shall we say, modifications? Let's just say that's why we never touch you. If we aren't careful, we could hurt you really badly." "I noticed. And the meals. I've never seen you eat. It's something we always missed. You know how important it is in our culture." "Yeah, well, you see, we are omnivores. That means we can eat your food. We find it delicious, by the way. But it also means we eat meat." I grimaced. Perhaps that's one mystery best left a mystery. Perhaps. Our species is old, and we've not always had the best reactions from other species, so we decided to omit certain facts when we met. Look, we really like you guys, but we were afraid that if you knew the full truth about humanity, you'd be scared of us. On behalf of the human species, I apologize." "Apology accepted. But I think we've got a bigger problem on our hands." Brian then looked at me. Then, he smiled. One cycle later, I found myself on the human ambassador's ship on the edge of our border. I was staring at a Zithian armada. Over 150 ships arrayed in front of me. The commander appeared on the screen. His body was bandaged. "I see you still don't get it," Brian said. "By the way, how's the arm?" "I am going to kill you last. But first I'm going to let you watch as your friend's world is turned into molten slag." Very well, I'm going to be generous here. I'm going to give you one last warning. Leave. Die! The Zithian commander screamed. The screen went black. "Friend Brian, I don't think your ship can take on an entire armada." "Oh, don't worry. I brought some friends." He leaned down and pressed a button. "Admiral, if you would be so kind." Ships, of a design I hadn't seen before, appeared as if from nowhere. Arrayed in front and to the sides of us. They were big, black, blocky, and absolutely massive. I counted. "I'm assuming those are yours, but I only count 10. How?" "I know. It's overkill. But we wanted to make sure our friends were well protected." "Overkill? We'll discuss that word later, but just exactly how is 10 against 150 overkill?" The Ziphian flagship opened fire with its main battery. The massive beam struck the human warship to our starboard side. I yelped and closed my eyes in fear. Jeez, these guys are psycho. I opened my eyes to see the human ship unharmed after a direct hit from a battleship main battery. You want to explain? Patience, my friend. Admiral, I believe we've given them quite enough warnings. Playtime is over. Agreed. Captain Harvey, permission to return fire granted. I felt it. Power. Sheer unimaginable power radiating from the human ship. Something dark and very angry leapt from the human ship's bow. It detonated on the left flank of the Ziphian armada. 10 ships disappeared in a searing flash of actinic light, leaving only a slowly expanding debris field. All ships, this is Admiral Quigley. Fire at will. Leave the flagship crippled but intact. It took less than a minute. Less than a minute for the humans to turn the entire Ziphian armada into a glittering debris field. Space itself seemed to scream in torture. It was terrifying. The flagship was left smoking but alive. Brian turned to his communication officer. Get the commander on the screen. It took a minute, but soon we were looking at a Ziphian, who was clearly in shock. Take this message back to your people. You were warned. You tried to hurt our friends. You threatened genocide. And you've killed others indiscriminately. You piss us off. Tell them the humans are coming. Tell them to run. Then he smiled.